Hello, welcome to Toffee TV. I'm joined in the studio by Dave Murray and Mike Cosgrove, and we are going to have a little chat about Mr. KT. Kevin Thelwell, hashtag thank you Kevin, as that's what the players have been saying, is leaving Everton football. We knew it anyway. Obviously Everton had confirmed it sort of last week, and Kev done a statement through the sporting directors group the other day to talk about his time at Everton. So, I mean, being here just over 3 years now, we'll leave in the summer. I think we can all agree it's the club's in a better place when he will go than when he joined it, certainly. And it is fair to say, Dave, he was working under difficult circumstances coming in. Yeah, the time he came in.
I think he's keen to tell us he's been working under difficult circumstances.
Fair play, yeah.
And he's been drowned this year by, I don't know whether necessarily above, because he even had a boss, but he certainly fell into that narrative. Oh, it's really hard, it's been difficult, you don't know what we've put up with. But undoubtedly, I think the numbers speak for themselves in terms of what he's brought in versus what has gone out. Some of them by necessity. Some of them have wanted to go because of what's happened on the pitch and coaching. But I think, like you said there at the top of the show, undoubtedly we're in a better place than where we were. I think we've just got to, when we go through his signings, and I'm sure we will, undoubtedly what's going to be left there, undoubtedly, because I keep saying undoubtedly.
Great word.
Undoubtedly, yeah. Is the lack of pace throughout the squad. Because we've talked about it before on previous shows, you can sort of get away with a poor touch or poor technical ability or whatever if you've got the pace to get you away from them situations. And we've been left with a sort of a one-pace squad. So I think when people look back, as body of work is from where we've been in terms of the points deductions and all that, and what he's had to cope with, and the structure he's put in place. And I think there's more behind the scenes than we've seen. Will reflect better on him than ultimately the pace. But the pace is the one thing that's really hindered us from being able to compete effectively. You can see, you look around the league, don't you? There's teams with pace who are not as good, player for player, quality wise, and that's that's not the be all and end all. They've all them perform, but you look at the likes of Bournemouth and
what they've done with pace,
done, even Forest, and when we've got a lower ultimate net spend than Luton, who have only just got off the bottom of the Championship last night. It's still, I think it's still a poor indictment. Than what being able to bring in.
I mean, Mike, undoubtedly, what's your sort of take on Kevin's tenure?
On his whole tenure
at Everton? Before we get into the sort of
I think,
which undoubtedly we will.
Undoubtedly will. I think his overall tenure has been hamstrung. Obviously, the financial side of it is what it is. However, it shouldn't just be a full-blown excuse for everything. There's still a market that you can work within. But undoubtedly, I think he's been hamstrung by the manager. So, again, just going back to when we did deadline day, and we were talking about it on transfer deadline day, where we would just put it out there about the Moneyball situation. So anyone who's watched the film, and I'm sure most people have, the sporting director is buying the players in to fit a system within the baseball team, and then the man or the coach, the baseball team isn't picking them. So he forces the hand by getting rid of the player to make him have to play them. And once they do, they start winning. It felt like a bit like that scenario. Now, I'm not saying his signings were all great and he didn't lack certain areas, but he definitely wasn't. The picture I'm sure that he had in his head wasn't getting put on the field. Predominantly under obviously Sean Dyche, which was not playing the players that he's bought, and certainly and some of them not playing them in the positions that they were probably brought in to be in. And then I think you said off camera 6-7 weeks ago, what we're saying now would be a very different discussion around the players that we're probably going to talk about than what it will be now. And that's because the current manager is playing them in the position that they're probably predominantly ideally for, and getting the most out of them and coaching them, which again is the prerequisite of what the manager should do. So these players, you know, for the transfer market that we're working in, you're not buying the finished article, you're buying players that are going to need coaching. So I think he's been a lot hamstrung, obviously, by the financial situation, and undoubtedly hamstrung, by the coach.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that is where it's hard to fully judge. And then you get into the layer, don't you, of, well, was it his decision on coaches, or should it have been his decision on the coaches and whatnot? And then there's that caveat. But I think a big part of it is a lot of the signings look a hell of a lot better now than what they did 6 weeks ago.
I think he will be the end of a line of a lot of people who've been in that position that have been hindered by muddled thinking.
Do you? I think it'll be more clear from now on.
Yeah, because manager's situation, financial situation, I'm not going to play him, but I'm going to play him. I don't want him, blah, blah, blah. And how many times have we seen that over, well, since Machiri's come in? It's been a mess, hasn't it? And it's carried on being a mess.
Yeah.
Right up until David Moyes is coming in, hasn't he? Or coming in again, Mark II.
Mark II.
Which is, and the club as a whole, I think he's just being, what's the right word? It's not he hasn't been a symptom of it, but he's been ingrained in them. So
He's been a cog within that machine, hasn't he?
Exactly. Yeah, he's just fitted in and carried on the same pattern.
I suppose...
And he hasn't helped because he's not a strong character.
I suppose he would argue, though, that you've got to just work within those confines, haven't you? If that's how the club sort of operating, then you have to operate within that. I think he's been a victim, definitely. I think not having a strong board and not having a clear vision, because Everton haven't had a clear vision since he come in.
No.
Farhad Mashiri, once the tap was turned off, the Muslim off, it seems.
Wouldn't you think, though, within his role, should he not be creating that himself? You know, like he is senior management if he's a sporting director.
We had this argument off camera saying, like, he's in a leadership role, so be a leader.
Yeah.
Now, he's clearly not got the cojones to stand up and say, I'm doing this. That's been left for Sean Dyche to fill that void. But then even, you know, under Frank as well, and now it's Moyes to a certain degree, in the last day of the window. The targets that he's put up, Moyes has just basically laughed them out of the club, hasn't he? We're not having any of them.
I think
that's what it appears to be.
I think it is difficult because I think it's like anything, isn't it? When you're an observer, everything seems more simple, doesn't it? So you watch a game of footy and you're like, why hasn't he passed that ball there for attack? You know, but in that moment, he's in whoever it is in the game and whatever else is going on. You see it with players, why don't we just sell him or buy him or whatever? So a lot of it we do simplify.
Yeah, of course you do.
But when you're in that position, he's gone in there under a board that he thought was gonna be there until Everton changed hands or whatever, and then that board, you know, shot itself in the foot, as we all know.
Foot, face,
everything, and threw everyone under a bus, and then all of a sudden they're not present, and he's there without a, you know, with absent boss, if you like, in the CEO, and Farhad seemingly trying to get out at every opportunity, trying to sell it to MSP, and then trying to sell it to 777, and then trying to sell it to John Texton, the freak, and you know, just wanting to be out there. And he has been left, I guess, at times with sort of a rudderless ship trying to steer it. Yeah, could he have been stronger? Well, it appears like he could have been. But I also think you have to say he's done a decent job, given I'd
say overall that he has. I think that's there's glaring holes, like you say. The pace is absolutely, there's no excuse for that. I don't think there's anything that you can sort of give him a pass on that. That's a bit negligent for me. But in terms of, like you say, the player trading from a financial perspective is a positive. And in terms of players he's brought in, like I say, more recently starting to look like, you know, they're a team that can certainly be a mid-table Premier League team, not a team fighting relegation. So overall, I'd say he's done a decent job in very trying circumstances. You know, I'm sure, you know, we've all been in work, you know, in working places, and there's certain companies that are proactive and there's certain companies that are reactive. And obviously in the situation he's probably working in, everything's reactive. So there's no clear plan, there's no clear structure. I'm sure one day he's told he's got a budget of this, the next day it's changed to something else because suddenly another bill's coming that he didn't realise. You know, and I'm sure that's the reality of the day-to-day of the chaos that he was operating within. So those things, you know, you take into consideration and go, you know, yeah, that's going to be, you know, certainly the type of role he's doing where you are about planning, it's about planning. If you can't look too far ahead because everything's chaos, it's difficult. But we'll never know the full ins and outs. But I think overall he's done a decent job, and you know, obviously looking at the response, you know, the players seem to value him. I think a couple of own goals, like I say, is the pace, and then his lack of you know, media stuff for engagement with the fans and getting that across. Obviously done a little bit more as it went on. But it, certainly when it was in its height, if he was out there and communicating a little bit and us having a bit more of an understanding, but it would probably have helped them along the way. So
I think in our country as well, we don't really know what a director of football is. You see, they do it across the continent and the countries
it's different everywhere else. We don't have it here.
No, we don't at all. And I think people fall into the trap a lot of defining him as a head of recruitment, which is why he'll be judged on who he signed and on, more importantly, who he hasn't signed. But you know, he's gone full Wenger at times by saying, "Oh, I could have got such and such over the line." You know, Arsenal's famous for it. Oh, I had Ibrahimovic on trial. Oh, I could have had Messi. Yeah, of course you could, Arsenal. Let's just wheel you next to the sunny window for a bit. And the hardest thing is actually securing the deal and getting it over the line. And then he's wasted time. You know, with his, you think that he'd have a list of players. Now his list seems to be a pamphlet with Willie Gnonto's name on it for 2 summers, and it's just not good enough. Not good enough. There's loads of players out there. This channel has people who comment on them every day. We've just done a live, and 3 or 4 players have been named. So these have got all the data and all the tools within touching distance. You shouldn't be chasing players, and then it comes back to the budget thing. They must have known that it was 30 million. You don't then negotiate with this player for God knows how long, and then get to the bidding stage and go, "Oh no, it's 30 million. We haven't got that."
What's difficult is we don't know the circumstances, do we? So because he may have been told we've got 30 million, and then suddenly a bill comes across Farhad's desk and you haven't got 20 million, 30 million more, you've got 20, and then he's trying to renegotiate with Leeds.
And no Leeds, certainly on one of the non-so things, Leeds, they keep changing the place every time.
But then when that's been changed once or even twice, you go, right, who's the next fella on the list?
No, fair enough.
So
overall, he spent 145 million in that time, and Everton recouped 225 million. I think the bottom of the net spend over the last 5 years, and obviously his 3 years is in corporate, not the last 3 years, I think, the way bottom. You know, we don't buy players. Anyone who sort of scratching their head, if you were scratching their head as to why Everton all of a sudden were in relegation fights, just go look at the squad, look at the quality that was there when Carlo was here, and look at it now, how much has been
still shouldn't be in relegation fight.
No, but what I mean is that's
the coaching.
You know,
it's going to go down, obviously.
It's why it made the PSR stuff utter nonsense. Like utter nonsense. Is that our money was gone building the ground. Really, that's where the spend has gone, building the ground. It's not buying players. You know, when people talk about, Everton have broke the rules
8 years ago and all that,
Everton are cheating. It's like, cheating isn't building a stadium. Cheating is buying players when you can't afford it, like other clubs have done. You know, it makes a mockery of it. You know, Jim Ratcliffe just said United lost 400 million over 3 seasons. Well, that's not allowed. It's 105 million a season over the 3 years, mate. So why haven't you been done? Well, you know, we just pay that off or whatever. That seems, you know, when Everton were in that as well. So he's here at a time where all of a sudden they had to implement PSR because they don't want the independent regulators. The only reason. You know, I'm still a believer in all of the years PSR's been a thing. Nobody had ever failed it till Everton. What a load of nonsense that is, by the way. So he had all that to cope with. Obviously, 3 different managers. Frank Lampard was already here when he come in. He come in a couple of weeks after Frank, didn't he?
Did you?
He had Sean Dyche. I'm not convinced Sean Dyche, what I believe, wasn't on his radar to be Everton manager.
Yeah.
It was a Denise Barrett Baxendale sort of choice, apparently so.
Yeah.
So he wasn't, wasn't fully behind that thing. And I'm not sure how much he was fully behind David Moyes. I don't know. I know he liked Graham Potter or whatever.
I don't think he'll be much behind Moyes because he knows how that was going to play out.
So there you go. So that's where we are. He'll get another job, there's no doubt about that, and he'll go off and do a good job there as well, like he's done.
He's got enough stuff to back up what he's done, definitely.
Well, if we look at the 21 signings over that period of time, Idrissa Gueye, I think we'd all say was a good signing.
We replaced Idrissa Gueye with Idrissa Gueye.
Well, we've replaced David Moyes with David Moyes.
Exactly.
So there you go.
Yeah.
We're good at it.
Yeah.
Maybe Kevin Thelwell will come back in a few years.
Maybe, yeah. Older and wiser.
Yeah.
And ready to talk to the media.
Who knows?
But he's Idrissa Gueye. He's player of the year.
You know, excellent sign.
Player of the year.
You know.
Yeah.
Ilman and Jai, I think everybody would say has been a really good sign. 15 million quid.
And a sort
creativity, goals.
He's one of those signings where you go, that's a really good sign because he wasn't on people's radar. He wasn't a name people were spouting. But Idrissa Gueye was an open goal. It was an easy one.
For everyone who said what you've just been saying about Nonto, but that's what he did with Ndiaye. He wanted Ndiaye the year before, and Ndiaye went to Marseille, and he kept an eye on him, and then went and got him. So, you know, we can't fully dismiss if you identify a player, and he's the right player for you.
Yeah, but it's knowing where the line is.
Of course. But Ndiaye, I think we both agree, he's been excellent.
And now, but we talked about this on the live. He's got injured at the wrong time, and just as the shackles were coming off.
Yeah.
And he wasn't apt to play as a defensive wing back.
Yeah. So that was a good. James Tarkowski, I think, has been excellent for Everton. Yeah. He transfer 104 consecutive games, I think it is. Played every bit. Just fantastic defender.
Bit old school.
Don't get me wrong. He's had Bournemouth in the cup this year. It wasn't great from him, and he's had other games where. But in general, I think as a free transfer, Mr. Dependable, been a real good.
Played through the pain barrier, and body on the line. You wish you would have got him a couple of years earlier. It's just one of them, isn't he? Because he's now in his age. And
the development of Jarrod Branthwaite, I think, has been key.
Yeah.
With that.
Yeah.
Beto is one that maybe 8 weeks ago we'd have been gone. It's not really worked, but the deal that he'd done to get Beto at a time when we had no money to get a centre forward of a good age out of Italy, and when you look at his game started and his goals scored, his ratio's really, really good. His conversion rate this season's really, even with the 3 sitters at Brentford that he should have scored. You know, he's Everton's top goal scorer. Looks like a useful striker now, whereas maybe under Sean Dyche people were going, he's good enough, whatever. But David Moyes has given some confidence. Obviously had to play him a bit out of necessity as well, but he looks like he's a decent signing.
I think this just go back to the manager side of it as well, because not only is he playing for a start, but they're playing to his strengths, which is absolutely key, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I think
imagine my surprise.
I think we'd all agree when Beto was playing week in, week out and getting the ball whacked up to his head, we'd still all be bemoaning as a player. So again, obviously maybe a little bit excessive in terms of the overall price, but to structure a deal where you don't pay anything for the first 12 months. I mean, beggars can't be choosers. You've got no money. You've got to sort of work within those parameters. I think at least what he's doing now, he's got to a situation where he's valuable to the squad.
Yeah.
So whether he ends up becoming the mainstay of our strike force or whatever, we'll see. But he'll certainly be an asset to the squad, or alternatively, we'll be able to sell him and actually recoup money.
Yeah.
So whereas prior to that, it was looking like, God, we've just chucked 30 million down, or 27 million, whatever it was, down the drain. So again, just a victim of, he looks like an half decent signing because he's playing, and B, he's playing with balls getting played in front of him, which is exactly when we signed him. We all went on YouTube, didn't we? We all went on YouTube. We all watched this goal. And it was all that, every single one of them. So with the odd header, I think he had it from near post, but he was just running onto stuff. So again, it looks like a decent signing. This is where though. The overall thing with the Thelwell stuff of whether, like, how does it all work, and we'd never know. But like, obviously, when he's got Dice, if Dice ain't ever going to play him or play him the way you need to be playing, or why are we bringing him in? That's another sort of side issue. But overall, he's looking like a decent signing.
What's he on now? 7
goals.
He'll end up with double figures.
I think so. Yeah.
And then you say, well, for the price, for under 30 million, someone who gets you between 10 and 15 league goals every. Which he would on a full season. When you look at it, you'd snap your hand off, wouldn't you? You'd probably.
And he'd have been less than that if you paid money in the first year. He was that inflated price because you didn't pay nothing for a year, did we?
Yeah.
His last signing, Charlie Alcaraz. I mean, he obviously a loan with a view to buy.
Looks like a real live wide, doesn't he?
Looks good. Yeah. Looks
different
like
profile that we've got or we've had for a number of years in midfield, and looks. If we pay the money now, I would. Yeah,
interesting.
Best thing with Alcaraz is, for me, it's just the one that looks the most, or one of the most, obviously, other than like a Tarkowski and McNeil when you get to them, but he's so aligned with the manager. He looks like a David Moyes player.
Yeah, it does. So it's in the work rate with the ability. As well. Tim Abunam, which I think was a real clever deal as well. Obviously, helped Everton PSR wise as well, but Lewis Dobbin, I didn't see him becoming a first teamer at Everton. I just didn't. I thought he's quick and direct. Didn't really take it on. He may well do. Might just develop. And he's getting games now. Isn't playing at Norwich at the moment on loan.
He's just got a bad injury.
Yeah, he was doing all right, wasn't he? Obviously got injured again. Whereas Abunam, physically looks like he can cope. Looks like a really good footballer. Moyes will develop him and that. I think that was a really good signing as well.
I think he looks like a real modern box to box, old style, 90s, 80s, 4-4-2 style midfielder. Physicality he'll grow into it. Picked up a couple of injuries, I think, just by necessity of being put in. Because he didn't have.
Or wrestling with James Garner.
Or wrestling,
One went out with a broken back and a broken foot in the same week. I can only think they would have them WWE style fights.
Well, Stone Cold Dice was
there with his leather bills on. And he's, socked up to his knees.
Since he's been fit, I would have put him in.
Would you?
Lately. Just because to freshen it up, and because the squad is so thin now. And even, an hour, James Garner, you've just come back in, you've played every week.
Yeah.
You come out, Idrissa has been great, but now we're going through Ramadan as well.
Yeah.
All more of a reason to manage his minutes a bit more. Especially when it's going to be a bit warmer, although it hasn't yet, but you understand over the next month.
Well, hopefully we'll.
I think with Abunam, he's been like a massive bonus signing. I can't speak for everyone, but my thought process was Dobbin was going there, they were going there. It was just a PSR thing.
Maybe,
he'll go in the 21s. He might be on the bench or something. Didn't even. And then the way he coming in pre-season and the way he started the season, he was one of the highlights of that misery at the start of the season because he was. He was on the front foot, he was aggressive, he was playing the ball forward, and obviously that was everything why he got dropped.
No one hear that.
He must have been.
Jake O'Brien. He's one who you said before. People
absolute again,
people
pure
scratching their head in
pure victim of the manager again. I can't keep stressing it without going. I know it sounds longer over the same thing, but we spoke off camera and went. There was nobody out there in the fan base that I heard of or seen or whatever that was screaming out for Jake O'Brien to play right back.
No.
Nobody. And then arguably, would you play Jake O'Brien over Tarkowski and Branthwaite? I'd say no. So at that point you're thinking, may look like a good signing. Like when we're tight for cash, we spent 15 million on him.
But I think people's arguments though, Mike, I agree with you saying there, but I think the argument was Branthwaite wasn't fit.
Yeah, when Keane was playing, of course.
What was Keane playing for? And then Tarky was playing with a broken back.
Yeah.
So why was Tarkovsky?
But again, it comes down to
wasn't given a go.
Comes to the manager, and that's the thing, because that signing straight away to a fan base would be like, oh, thank God we've signed him because Branthwaite's injured. But when he didn't play him, it was like, well, because you would think the manager and the director of football are aligned, and obviously it felt like that player's been chucked on Dice, and we can see over his tenure, anyone who just seems to be put on him, he just disregards them. So
it almost looked like the signing you'd make when you were developing the squad, so you're all right, you're winning games, and you've got players in other positions, so you buy a defender a year early, and you're just going to develop
like the
him,
transition one for either Toffee or Branthwaite.
But it wasn't like that, and people were going, well, hang on, why have we signed him then? If we didn't have much money, why wasn't that 15 million used on a winger then? And you're going, yeah, but he's there because in case Branthwaite, whatever. But then as the months went on, he wasn't used. No. You know, he was in for the League Cup game against Doncaster, then he was back out, and then he was in for, and then he was back out, and it was like, you're not even getting him on the pitch in game. You know, when he threw him on at Old Trafford when it was 4-0 or something, didn't he? To go, oh, I do play him. Yeah. You know what I mean? And all of that. But now, he's been in for the last 8 games, haven't they? 8 games unbeaten.
It's lucky charm, isn't he? Irish. Look at the Irish. You know what I mean? Never getting dropped ever. But Moyes Mark 1 did a lot of this of playing players in what you wouldn't think was, like you just said there, no one was screaming for be it right back, was a centre back. Play them out of what you would determine as now out of position. Arteta was wide, wasn't he? Seamus was right midfield. Right wing, Jagielka started in midfield.
Lescott left back.
We've seen it. So it just looks like a good, shrewd move, coaching, instead of having lost to the summer wine at right back.
But the irony was, though, was that Young was probably one of our top performers during the season until Brien come in and took his place.
So I'm going to go with him, but it was either him or Seamus. Patterson again was another one. Being much maligned.
But what I mean is that the call by Moyes wasn't even like the player that was playing in that position was one of our more consistent performers in the current regime.
Well, wasn't,
But Moyes has looked at it and gone, we want to build for the future. This guy has attributes which he identified very quickly. How do I get him into the team? And again, because of obviously
the play higher up as well.
Well, the stature of him and everything, you just wouldn't look like someone you play out wide. He's not like a Ben Godfrey who was a centre back and you go.
I'll be honest, the odd person did say, how about, like, have you ever thought we should give him a go at like right back or something at the moment while we've got injuries now? Just thinking, he's like 6'6" playing right back. I didn't want the Dan Burn thing. Although Dan Burn's done really well up in Newcastle wide. So I know, but and to be fair, Moyes looked at the way he was passing the ball in training and was like, actually, we're going to use him because he's good on the ball. And obviously Patterson wasn't.
And then enables you to use Ashley Young the right way as well. It's just them little things. So
the nuances, isn't it?
No, he's been good. Amadou Onana splits a lot of people.
Well, people who understand football and people don't.
Well, your words, not mine, Dave. I just think he splits a lot of people. I thought he was a really good signing for Everton. I thought he was a good player for Everton. He wasn't amazing, but he was a good player. I think with a good manager, like David Moyes, I think he'd look a lot better than he did do under a substandard manager. But and there's the reason that you sort of know that as well is that a really, really top manager identified him and come and bought him and took him to a Champions League team, which Villa are at the moment. So I think that was a good sign. He got him for 30, sold him for 50. I thought he did all right for Everton.
He's another one of them players, though, that if you would have got him a year earlier, you would have got him for...
Of course, we'd have got him cheaper.
And it's what we need to do is identify them. But would he be the same player without that year at Lille?
But we still got him, had them for 2 years and made 20 million on him.
Well, exactly,
that's a good signing, surely.
It is a good signing, I liked him. I think he's very much in the modern one sitting midfield, like the Rodri type. Could go on to even, be that player at City. I think he's, because of the way his body is, and you can see it now, he's struggling with injuries.
A couple of injuries now.
Because Everton is sort of, he doesn't carry much muscle, so everything he gets sort of on the bone. But I thought he was great. I would have kept him. But it's got us out of a bad situation in terms of handling the PSR, but in terms of quality of player, definitely the quality should have. And will be looking to.
And
get
there's other ones
forward.
around now that you just mentioned there, but there's other ones there for 10 million, 15 million, 18 million. You can go and get who could turn into 40, 50 million pound players.
Yeah.
I think, again, I think he was a good signing. I was excited when we got him in. But yet again, another one who... Are these, is he talking to the manager? Are they on the same page here? Because he doesn't fit in.
Well, he come in for Frank Lampard, didn't he?
Oh, did he? So he was there with Frank. Okay.
So he wasn't. And yet, ironically, that's his first game.
Yeah.
He had one of his best games for Everton against Arsenal. When we beat Arsenal, he was absolutely outstanding. He was up and down. He was everywhere. He scored. He was brilliant.
Yeah. I'm the same when he come in, and I thought he's got all the attributes. Then I didn't realise after that, but obviously.
But
we just bypassed the midfield, didn't we? We just you can't utilise a ball playing midfielder if you're just doofing it down the pitch. That was the reality of what happened.
Wasn't playing towards the end, was he?
No, and the reality was that when, like you say, he, to appease the PSR, he was absolutely, in the current circumstances, if that's your manager, he was a perfect player to move on because he wasn't playing him and he was never going to get the best out of him.
That was what I found weird about that as well, because he then bemoaned the fact we sold him, but he never played. He was sub for the last bits of the season and then was like, well, we've lost quality.
Yeah, of course he will do.
He didn't like him anyway. Two players we got on loan. Connor Cody, I thought overall was a good signing. For the loan, we had them on loan for the season.
He's one in the Gareth Barry mould where I went, why are we getting him? And then I wish we would have kept him.
You sure? Yeah.
When Leicester go down, I'd have him back as the backup rotational instead of when Keane goes.
For a loan, I thought he'd done a really good job. And then obviously Oral Mangala, who was one we got in the summer. I think John Sexter was giving us plays because he thought he was going to own us, but fair play to him. But he come in and once he sort of got in the team, I thought he did a really good job, and we're missing him at the moment a little bit.
When he first come in, I thought he was an absolute car crash the first few weeks when he played.
He hadn't played.
He looked like a pub player, but by the time he got injured, I thought he was one of the first names he'd ever had on the team. He was absolutely superb.
There was one game he took him out, and it was like, I don't know what game it was. They'd all muddled in them last games on the dice, didn't he? They were that poor. And then he was back in the next week, and I was thinking, why did you even mess around with that one? Once something's working, and not a lot's working for you.
Probably passed the ball forward too many times.
Well, this is it,
But I think overall he was a good signing, wasn't he?
He's also one I'd monitor in the summer.
No, he'll be out till November.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it that? Yeah. Because I think
we can't be going after lads who've just done the ACL at 26, 27.
No, definitely not.
We can't. James Garner, talking of midfielders, Everton got him 10 million quid from United when Frank Lampard was here. Got good potential, I think. I still think I look at him and I go, not sure what, I just don't think he's found a level. He has games where, like Leicester, he was brilliant, wasn't he? That ball for Beto, sensational. He was everywhere. And I thought against Brentford, I think it was Brentford, he had a really good game as well. But against Wolves, he just looked way off it against Wolves. I think he's got to find what he is and get that consistency level, but the potential's definitely there.
Another one, victim of no coaching. Wouldn't even say poor coaching, no coaching, because he's someone who can quite quickly fit into the Tom Davis role of
he's not.
I'm not being coached, I'm not being developed.
I think he's a David Moyes type midfield player though.
Yeah, he's almost like your Swiss Army knife type player. He's good vision, he gets around the pitch, he can put a foot on the ball, he's positionally aware. It's just,
I think he's very similar to Mangala. I think he's not as good as Mangala yet, but I think he was very similar to Mangala. So when Mangala would come out and it timed where he'd come back in, I thought that
it stuck together.
I think that's exactly what he is. And I think
you forget how young he is as well.
But also he's been victim for injuries. So where you're talking about that consistency, he hasn't had that consistency to be able to just play week in, week out. But also again playing for the team that's going to be a little bit more on the front foot, with a little bit less pressure within the team. I think he'll just improve. I mean, again, for 10 million and for an English player, it was a steal. I think it was a really good signing, and one that'll only look better over the years.
Dwight McNeil, another one that splits opinion.
He's a channel of. He's a favourite of this channel.
Lovely left foot.
Yeah.
I think he's a good squad player.
Yeah.
I do think. Low wages aren't particularly high. I think we paid about 18 million for him, which is not bad. really. I wouldn't have gone for him because Everton needed pace and he come in as a wide player with no pace, and I don't get that. But when he's been off the striker, I think he's been really good. I think if Everton had a sort of a flat and midfield three, I think he could operate one of them three as well at times. But I think overall he's a good player. And I think I won't really properly judge him until I've seen him under David Moyes as well, because we've seen him under, you know, a more negative manager and a manager that doesn't want to go forward.
Yeah.
Where this lad's strengths really will be offensively. Rather, he's not great, can't tackle, can he? So I think I just wonder what he'd be like under David Moyes, but he might just end up being a squad player or whatever. But it's up to him to when he gets back fit again, to force his way in. But I suppose when you look at the money and the output, it's not been a
really
bad
difficult one for me because he fits for the previous manager.
Yeah.
Because obviously his dead ball taking abilities have been, and that's what we've missed out the team since he's gone out.
We have.
It absolutely massively missed it. But fundamentally, for me, I think if you want to progress as a team, like you say, at best, he's a squad player because I think that he's got decent numbers and decent output, but that was around the way we were playing.
Yeah. And a lot of the numbers are set pieces.
Think the more offensive we play, I think it will make him look worse, in my opinion. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he comes. And like I say, I want any Everton player to do well. But I don't think he will do as well in that scenario. I think obviously his figures inflated by the dead balls, aren't he? Without the dead balls, I think his assist and stuff in open play aren't particularly great.
But he might say that's part of the way we were playing, though.
No, and that's exactly
that's why I'm saying with David Moyes, it might be a bit different. It might be have a different player.
Yeah,
you know?
and maybe he can fit into. But I'm hoping that the David Moyes way moving forward involves pace on the wings.
I think it will.
I know, like you're saying, probably his best performances for us have been as a number 10. But to me, Alcaraz is a much better footballer than him, so I would have him in that scenario anyway. So
I don't think I have any problems in being a squad player. It's just you're playing and that's it. You're playing.
Yeah, and you're never getting subbed either.
You're never getting subbed,
even though you look like you're dying.
Ironically, fella behind me, I turned around and went, "Oh my God, he's been subbed," and it was the day he got 2 against Palace. And he shouted back to me, he's getting subbed when he's on a hat-trick. You know?
Yeah.
So we don't want any more goals.
Too many forward passes.
Too many forward passes. But he was a centre mid coming through. So,
yeah, he was at United when he was at Bayern. He was a centre mid first, but he shoved them wide.
Pace for the wing, has he?
No, he hasn't. And good vision.
Can hit the ball.
Yeah, left foot.
Yeah, so in that central position,
got a nice left foot on him.
No reason to think he can't be a rotational player. Definitely. And young enough to be coached by Moyes.
Jack Harrison, loan. I know we've had to pay the wages, but he's
a victim of circumstances.
Being at Everton in a difficult period, as in, not for him. Like, we got him on loan because he just signed a big deal with Leeds, beat off Aston Villa to get him. He's not been amazing, but he's been a dependable Premier League footballer for us, and I thought he's had some good games. He's had games when he's not been so good, but he's another one that, because he worked so hard and protected the fullback, he was in every week, and he was for me, played on his wrong side. You know, Dyche couldn't see past him on the right hand side, probably because of McNeil on the left. But you know, even when Dwight McNeil was pushed inside, he was still always on the right hand side. And I don't think it done him any favours. And David Moyes has gone, well, give you a little go on the left, see if you're any better. And he's been all right on the left, but for a player,
and he's only coming because of NJ being out.
Of course. Listen, of course, and that's football, isn't it? But I think for a loan for 2 seasons and knowing what you're gonna get, I think Kevin Thelwell done it. I know a lot of people might disagree, but I think he done a decent job to get him in, because it is about the squad, and he is versatile. He's played right, left, number 10 for us. He's played defensive.
He played wing back once,
like a big wing back as well. So I think
he gives you options, and he gives you plenty of energy, and he'll leave it all out there, no matter if he has a good or a bad game. Yeah. But I think you pulled it up not so long ago that Jack Harrison's only appearances of right midfield have come under Sean Dyche. He'd never ever played there.
Well, so, Leeds he'd had bits, but the majority were always on the left hand side. Most of his numbers were on the left.
And you've seen he's simplified. We've been crowd, just simplify a game, get it, cross it, or get it, shoot. And it's it's starting to. He had a hand. He obviously scored last week. He had a hand in the Palace winner.
He did.
So he did. It's all these little things just keep chipping away, and his confidence was on the floor.
It was.
He's coming to an age now where probably wants to put down some roots. Now, if them roots are here, it's got to be on.
New York City.
I think he'll be going abroad. But I'd certainly have him either, between 5 and 10 million or on a loan. Yeah.
I
Just
like
for squad purposes.
I like Jack, but I think he'll.
You'd always want better.
I think we need
for me,
we need better.
If you're reviewing it as a signing and not a player, do you know what I mean? Solely the player. As a signing, it was a good signing because he'd come off a season where he just scored 7 goals, I think. Yeah, so to get him on loan with no loan fee and just scored 8 goals in the Premier League. So from that side of it, made sense, good signing. The player for me has been very underwhelming. Again, it could be a victim of all sorts. Obviously, the manager played the wrong side, blah, 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 and the knock-on effect to it. He's one for me that he's been fine for where we're at and what we've needed, but I certainly wouldn't want him next season for me. I think he's the one where, because he's already, when we've got a fully fit team, he's not in it. So what I want is the players who we bring in replace the players who are starting and they become the squad players, and he gets pushed out for me.
That's the only way you'd improve by doing that. Ashley Young.
Good pro, dependable. You get
3 transfer.
I think he's been a great step.
I think left back.
Right midfield, left midfield.
There's some games where he's just come on, particularly the derby last year. Goodison came on at half time and just played in slippers. Used all his experience, and that's what we just need to do. With him now.
The mad thing with him is, I think the first 6 months when he come in, he looked at an absolute car crash. He was giving fouls away, wasn't he? And penalty and also, and then suddenly got to grips with it and looked like the player that you thought we were going to bring in. I think we probably all didn't expect him to play as many games as he has done. But again, I would say, for free and what he's brought to the squad and utility-wise, very good signing.
I think he could go on for another year.
Possible, we'll see, won't we? I mean, if you're giving him 15 minutes and he's just as a squad player 20 minutes, then and sets the tempo every day in training, then we'll see. Begovic, we can't. He's a coach. No worry about that one. Same with Ruben Vinagre. There's no point with that. He was given, come on against Chelsea, I think, on day 1 for about 20 minutes and played 1 cup game, I think, and that was it. And
I think he's probably the best left back I've ever seen.
Probably, yeah.
He was good against Kiev. Set McNeil up for a header.
For a header at the street end, So maybe that was it. Just play him in Europe.
That was as good as it got.
He's now playing in Legia Warsaw.
Is he?
Yeah.
Flying.
After going to Hull and only playing 10 times, he now plays for Legia.
Just a victim of circumstance.
He's loving it over there.
Maybe. Maybe that, seeing his agent was able to send Legia Warsaw the cross for McNeil's goal. Yeah. And just go, look, see how good his left foot is.
And that's the last time any Everton players got to the byline.
And put a cross in. So fair play to Ruben. Yusuf Chimiti. It's a difficult one. Looks like loads of potential. Was impressed with him last season, the little bits we saw of him. Been out all season. Could be a really good sign. Could be one of them that just flitters away to nothing.
Essentially, he's had 2 years of no development, hasn't he?
Yeah, really, yeah. I mean, they would argue training with the first team every day, Premier League players, you will develop. And I thought against Sligo, when he come on, he scored 2 crackers and looked good.
But it wasn't just his all-round play was good.
And his all-round play, the Sligo's reserves, which Everton didn't beat under Big Sean. I thought against Brentford, when he made his only start. I thought his link play was superb. He almost scored early on. Couldn't get on the end of that McNeil cross. Brought people into play. I'd seen flashes of him being able to do bits of everything, run, dribble, get shots away. So I think there's a lot of potential there, but
again, this goes the 2 things, isn't it, with the signing, that as in, was he a good signing or is he a good player and all that? Yeah. Well, as you're building the squad, you're building, profiles, aren't you? So he's coming young, fast by the looks of it, decent ball mastery. He's got that potential.
Ball mastery?
I'm
having that one.
Love it. Yeah. Love it. Come on, carry on.
And he's come in, obviously, on a payment structure, haven't he, where we spread it over the course of his contract. So from an actual signing perspective, I think he's a very good signing. In terms of the play, we won't know, but those type of signings you don't know, that's not anything based
They're
off
the ones
Thelwell,
we want Everton to make, and we bemoan the lack of them.
absolutely. And I think again, like you say, with the injuries, obviously this, you know, it's been a real shame because he would have got probably a lot of minutes this season.
This year he would have, definitely.
Yeah.
Jesper Lindstrom in on a loan. You can tell he's a good player. Liverpool were all over him before he went to Napoli as a number 8 though, or a 10. Everton of Napoli used him as a winger, hence he didn't play that much and didn't score that much, and Everton were able to get him, and Everton have used him as a winger and he hasn't scored, and he got his first assist at the weekend. Looks like there's a player in, he's back in the Denmark squad, looks like there's a player in there, there's talent there undoubtedly, but no goals and 1 assist, and it's March, and he has played. He has had over 20 appearances. I think it's 72 games without a goal for him personally now.
You're a bit more than the man, aren't you?
I think isn't he in the top 5 of the league for expected assists and expected goals?
And hasn't got any.
And hasn't got any.
Him and Jack Harrison before Saturday were the highest.
I think Andy Robertson's the top.
Under the performance.
The leading that. So, again, a player out of position. I want to see him with a full pre-season under a real manager. I'd have him again on loan. Certainly not for 20 million. Napoli are going to struggle to, you know, if he goes back to Germany, they're probably a host of clubs who take their hand off, no problem.
Not for 20 though, I don't think.
No, not for 20, but if they drop the price or whatever. You know, good age, coachable.
Good age.
Good age.
Soccer, I'd say with it again, he's another one of. I'd say it was a good signing, but he's not necessarily a great player, if you know what I mean. So the context of the signing on loan, you can see why we've brought him in.
He seems to be the only one who with a little bit of pace in our team as well.
Yeah, a little bit of pace. He works hard as well. So you can see why we've brought him in. So from that side, I'd say he's a good signing. And anyone who's on loan, there's not much risk element involved. So good signing, not done enough yet for me to warrant wanting them around next season at the minute. But it's time for that to change.
Armando Broja.
Said it before, he's got cheese string for legs. So it's been a problem. There's no way in any universe Everton are paying 30 million for him. Not even if they had £1 billion to spend with no consequences. No. So, what can you say? He's never been fit since.
Did you understand why they took him? I did, but
absolutely, it was last minute. We didn't pay anything when he first come injured.
Yeah, no paying.
We weren't even paying his wages till he was fit.
Yeah,
he was worth it. I thought he was worth a gamble.
Why he's done it? Again, this goes to the reality is a fully fit Armando Broja is a £30 million player, and we were getting him for free without paying wages until he was fully fit. So, again, good signing, as in the context of the signing. The player, again, I think everyone knows he's good, but he is injured. It's been years now, hasn't it?
Yeah. I don't know whether he can cope with the English football physicality. Some players just can't.
No.
And I think if he goes abroad, if he goes to Spain,
a little bit slower, more technical, might be better off. Arnott Danjuma, Everton got him on loan after losing him a few months earlier. He come in on loan. Obviously, Kevin Thelwell had done a lot of work with him, convinced him to come. He turned down Milan to come to Everton, and was definitely a victim of Sean Dyche. Definitely.
His decision making's definitely not good, then, is it?
No, decision making's poor if he's turning down Milan.
Yeah.
But well, it was poor turning down Everton for Tottenham, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He was never going to play there. Everyone knew he was never going to play there.
Yeah.
But he come in obviously, and I think he saw.
I'll be honest. I never liked that signing. After he turned down it, I thought, hang on, this. See, like I say, a lot of them have made sense to me. That didn't make sense, and it certainly didn't make sense when you seen who the manager was. So I was just like, I'm not saying he's a bad player, but I didn't like the signing. So that was one of the ones that I'd say was a bad signing by Thelwell, but not a bad player, just not for us. And the context of he's come almost like, it didn't work here. I'll come to you now. I'm thinking that's not how you start your career with Everton. That doesn't sit well with me. That although I'm sure that happens quite often, but I don't want to know about it in my face. You know what I mean? So
Anything to add, Dave?
I think he's a victim of not being called Dwight McNeil, isn't he? because he started when he finally got here. He was started all right, and he got a couple of goals.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden,
Looked all right, giving the Al.
yeah, McNeil was fit, and then he really should have been given a run of games when Dwight McNeil was having them problems at home. And we hope everything's a lot better and rosy than it was then. But for his own protection, he should have been taken out, and Dan Juma should have been, and he was never given a run. And then when he did come in, it was a Palace in the Cup. Fulham got injured.
He was good in the first half of Palace in the Cup.
And then he moved him over to the...
Then he swapped him and it didn't work.
And then he was good at Fulham. And then he got injured, and then that was the end of that.
Didn't see him again.
So we get another one he's fumbled and made a mess of. And he's doing all right at Girona now.
Yeah, he scored against Arsenal, didn't he, early in the season. And finally, I'm sure this was Kev's best signing and best moment. The decision to move away from Seru Girassi and take Neil Maupay from Brighton, which I'll never understand why we took Neil Maupay from Brighton, who Brighton decided wasn't good enough to score goals for them. We took him when we needed goals, when we had a 6'4" striker, and we were only ever going to play one way under. You know, we wanted a big, powerful striker. I know it was for Lampard, but we wanted a powerful striker because Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but Dom was injured, and yet we went for a fella who's my size, who's still slower than me now, even though I'm 20 years older than him or whatever it is. More.
The season at Brighton, before we got him, was the season when everyone went, oh, Brighton would be amazing if they had someone to put the ball in the net. And we signed that person.
Their XG that year had them third in the league.
Yeah. It was a joke, wasn't it?
Because he used to miss so many.
And we signed that person. That's all you need to know. And we paid actual physical cash for them as well. That was it.
That's the most damning signing for Kevin Thelwell, I think. If you're just talking about recruitment, he was a terrible signer.
Yeah.
27 appearances for Everton, 1 goal. It wasn't a bad goal, to be fair, but we should have known this debut. Basically, Liverpool, he missed an absolute sitter at the street end, didn't he? Damari Gray put it on a play for him, didn't he? An open goal, and he had the whole goal, and he hit it where Alisson was stood. You know, it's hard enough putting it past Alisson, you know, but don't put it where he's standing.
Yeah,
you know, and he was rubbish for Everton, and he's horrible as well, isn't he? Anything to add?
No.
Right, let's leave it there. Utter garbage. So that was that.
You're not wasting your breath on him, are you?
No, don't waste your breath. So it was a terrible signing, Kev. Don't ever do it again. Don't ever do it again. Just very briefly to finish, though, obviously Kevin Thelwell is leaving. And Everton in there, when they announced the changes last week and announced that Thelwell was leaving, said they're moving to a different structure now. And it's going to be headed by David Moyes. Okay. And it looks like they're going to bring in a new head of recruitment, Rob Newman, the former Norwich City centre-back. Do you remember him? No. Big donkey. You were both, that guy can assure you were both definitely watching football when Rob Newman was playing. Because you're about 40 at the period, trying to pretend you're 30. No, he was at Man City, but he was also West Ham's head of recruitment with Moyes, so you can understand those links. And obviously Mick Doherty, and Michael Doherty's another one who's the Atlanta coach, but Atlanta chief scout rather, but he was at Everton when David Moyes was there, moving towards that. You mentioned it before, the way sporting director of football is in this country. The way we do it, we're just not like Europe. It's in Europe very much like you said before, it's the Moneyball thing of the general managers in baseball, aren't they? In Europe, the sporting directors, and they just buy everyone and go and coach them. You know, here we, for whatever reason, we don't do it. So are you more comfortable with changing the structure, or do you think Everton should go down the director of football route and do it more European way?
Hasn't worked. I don't think there's been much evidence, with the odd exception, that it actually works in this country. Abroad is much more of a model. Like say, it's a coach, whereas here it's always been a manager. We've tried to bring it in, and I don't think Brighton. Okay, that's worked there, but I mean, the probably most obvious example of the lack of understanding is Man United. Of what actually that role entails. But I'm glad we're pivoting away from it. It's not worked, but and and I know John has his reservations about giving power to a manager, but then if you have a manager who has no say, then when they've been almost brought up in a way, then you're not going to change David Moyes now. He has an idea of where we need to be. I think it's just have the right people to have the correct decision and, you know, an equal input. As long as you've got all the facets of what you need to get there, then fine. And then it's only the manager who lives and dies on results, isn't it? Which is how it'll always be, and I'll always understand it. So a head of recruitment in a system like that, I think, would work better, because they're almost like a chief scout, aren't they, in many ways. And that's what they're there for. Here's a list. Okay, the manager sees we play like this. What about him and him? Okay, yeah, let's get round the table and agree, or whatever. And we've had too many cooks for a long time, too much muddle thinking. I said at the top, it's time to go in a different direction. And you look at the way they've, in their most recent example, how they've gone away from it at Roma, where it's not worked, and they've tried to get a system, and, you know, the manager, and then the manager who's now at Southampton, you know, went in quick succession. Now they've got an old hat in Ranieri, who almost is that atypical English style manager rather than an Italian style coach. So it'd be interesting to see, but I just want more accountability and more pace.
Okay. Mike?
I tend to agree. I think with the system that we were working under, we haven't done it properly, have we?
So seem like no.
But
we've never gone fully.
We've just gone through the players and just gone, Dice didn't play half of them. So the system doesn't work.
It's broken. Yeah.
So the reality is, in the way we had it, you either have a director of football, sporting director, whichever, you know, purchasing the players to put in. But if that within that structure, he isn't demanding that the manager plays them, or the head coach, and he has to, and he's accountable for that, then it doesn't work. And it quite clearly doesn't work in how we've implemented it under the various director of football that we've had and the various managers we've had. So whether that's from above them, which it probably is, and John would probably say that that's the you know, what's getting fed down from the top. But for me, I just think football gets overcomplicated. Yeah. I understand that it's moved on and times have moved on, this, that and the other, but there's certain premises that haven't changed. Yeah. If you buy good players and coach them well, and you'll win football matches. And the reality is that hasn't changed. Now, how you identify players has definitely changed. Of course it has. And that's what they're putting in place, isn't it? They're going to put a team in place to identify players properly. Yeah. But fundamentally, the person who's going to play them, or is going to have to coach them on a day-to-day basis, should have to say, I would say, you know, like, and if you've got, you know, trust in, because obviously the argument is, well, obviously if he gets sacked in 12 months' time, we're left with players that were his players. Well, we've got Sean Dyche players there. We've got players that weren't Sean Dyche players, but were for Sean Dyche, and he didn't. So you don't. It's not like. And you look through everyone else, probably other than maybe Brighton and Brentford. I'd say everyone else have got a mismatch of a squad. So I'm all for it, and I also think the long-term vision, or my guess will be the long-term vision will be to move Moyes a little bit higher up, and maybe it isn't a director of football, but a certain type of role, and then you do maybe bring in the younger coach who's used to working in that type of environment. But for right here and right now, and you know, John will be, you know, I say John should speak on his behalf, but certain people have the point of view of, like, you know, you need to be planning so far ahead. I don't think football's like every other business that you can plan so far ahead. It is almost, you know, a couple of seasons at absolute most. So the reality is, do you need to plan for 5-6 years' time? Do you need to have this really young coach? And at the end of the day, we just want to start winning football matches, and within this structure, I think it will give us more opportunity to win football matches. So, long-winded answer, I'm all for it right now, and I think you've got the right person in the back of it, because it shows that if you got a director of football that doesn't have the authority to implement those players playing, and at that point, is he then the coach? you know, where are the blurred lines? You know, like if you're almost dictating the starting lineup, then how does it come? So no, I'm all for it, and obviously Moyes' track record of buying players, and certainly when he was at Everton, I haven't done a deep dive on his West Ham buys, but when he was at Everton, they were exceptional. So no, I'm all for it. Be a good summer, I think.
Excellent. Let's leave it there then. Let us know what you think about Kevin Thelwell's time at Everton Football Club. Success, not success? And what about the new structure? Are you thinking Everton should stick with a director of football model, or are you happy that the club are going to move to a slightly different structure? And obviously we'll find out in due course what that looks like, but David Moyes spearheading that, it seems. So let us know. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all that. Big thanks to Dave and Mike. See you later.